either a select set of interviews with key collaborators or partners or external stakeholders, or we can also do a survey if you have a large group that you're hoping to get feedback from. Once we have that piece in place, we would walk you through 2 to 3 strategic planning work sessions. Typically, those happen with City Council. We can also have those with management if desired or combined. But within those work sessions, that's where we're really hashing out, here's the direction, here's where we're going, here are the pieces that we want in the plan, and doing some prioritization work there. Then we'd put together the draft of the strategic plan for review by leadership. And then that becomes, once all the feedback is incorporated, your final strategic plan. In this case, we'd also work with you to create an implementation plan template, basically the template that you would expect departments to use as they are moving forward and actually executing on the plan, so that they can be describing, here's the activities that we're doing, and here's how we're measuring, managing our progress. So that is our overarching process for this work. And as you can see here, I just have a sample schedule up where in this case, it would be about 3 months. Sometimes it kind of spills over into 4 months, depending on timing. But usually we want to move through this pretty quickly, where we're getting input in that first month. Month 2 is really dedicated to those work sessions. Here I have 2 council work sessions built in. And then month 3 is doing some of that iteration on the plan itself and getting any feedback that you would like to see as part of this process. So, the last thing I wanted to mention is that we are currently working with the Port of Cascade Locks on their strategic plan as well. And so I think that that might be a really nice, these 2 projects could really help inform each other as well when we're thinking about, the economic development that is generated by the port, how that impacts the city and vice versa. So I just wanted to flag that for you too. So I think that is the end of my presentation. What questions do you have for me?
Hi there. My name is Pete. And it's Annie, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Hi.
Can you hear me okay? It's sometimes it's a little hard to hear us on the owl here.
You're good.
Okay. The question I have for you is probably some of the feedback that I've heard from community members so far about, I guess, strategic planning in general. What would you say to members of our community that are concerned about hiring Moss Adams? It's a significant investment if our budget's already tight, and what is there a purpose for strategic planning if you don't have money in the budget to implement those plans?
That is a really great question. And I would say if the outcome of this was we got you a laundry list of a bunch of projects that you would never be able to accomplish, that would be a failure on our part, right? Part of what we are here to do as the facilitators is also help walk through, okay, does this even seem feasible? And getting some of that feedback as we generate a list of priorities. The other really critical thing that strategic plans can do is help you prioritize things. And ideally, the strategic plan is the tool that you can take out every time a new shiny project comes along, and you can say, does this make sense? Is this aligned with our plan? Is it not? Can we use this plan as a way of actually saying no to certain things that don't make sense for us as a city in the long run if we do have constrained resources? So I think that strategic plans, when done with the focus on having them be really practical, I think that they're an excellent tool to help the leadership team here and the management team both prioritize, if we have limited resources, how should we spend them best?
Very good, thank you. And then there's a lot of data that we're gathering. We got to be meeting with the city council, city staff, running surveys, and then you spoke a little bit about community input as well. It sounded like one of the ideas there would be to put together a survey that can people, I guess, how do we increase participation? We've done a survey the last couple of years at a community picnic, but it's still not a lot of respondents when you compare it to the total number of people in the population.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And for this type of a process that is a little bit more slimmed down than I would say in terms of, a traditional strategic planning process might last 6 months and include a lot of community input. In this type of a setting, what we would want to do is really pull on anything that you've already done. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel. If you have, for example, good feedback from that community survey that you just mentioned, we'd want to be pulling that in and then really focusing on just making sure that we are giving people an opportunity to participate if they are interested in participating and providing feedback. I think that's the most critical thing, is making sure that at some point throughout this process that you have an open door that says, here's your moment to gather feedback from you all. So that's sort of the approach that we take when it is sort of a smaller process, is making sure we have that one key moment where we open the door and say, yes, please, we're welcoming in your feedback here. But in terms of community input as well, we like to do that often when we get more toward the end where we have an actual draft plan. That can be a really nice way of giving something so that people can actually react to it. Sometimes in strategic plans, you see a lot of community input right at the beginning, kind of as part of the visioning exercise. But if you have a limited budget, if you have a limited timeline, I would say the most critical piece is really saying, here's our draft. What do you think about this? Because that's often when you get the most, I would say, useful and specific feedback from people as well.
Thank you.
Hi, Anne, Denise Emmerling-Baker. I have worked with community planning both in Village of the Mount Hood and Milwaukee Industrial Area Planning Committee. So I'm familiar a little bit, and I'm a big fan of the community input, both at the beginning and the end. And yet I understand our limited budget. And I'm going to be frank with you, we have budgets from 12 to 20. And I was hoping with Moss Adams working with the port that we might save a little money on travel budget, maybe a little money on some of the documents that you look at for economic development. So I guess my question is, the biggest question to you is, how would Moss Adams, I love that you have a city, county, tribal, and port connection. How does that benefit us for that extra money we might spend if we chose you? And are you familiar with and can guide us to funding avenues to help us meet some of this plan, such as state committees? We've just joined the Main Street organization. Are you familiar enough with that for small towns that you can help guide us to realistic steps toward implementation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first piece of that, in terms of how we would work with you all on the overlap between the port, I do think that this is a really fantastic opportunity because we will be asking and doing soliciting input from a variety of stakeholders for that plan that I think will have some useful pieces. A lot of that is obviously focused really on economic development. So I think that would be the primary way that we would see that potentially show up on your side as well. But we could absolutely take everything that we're hearing in terms of the economic development needs as part of the port planning process and make sure that it's incorporated here as well. Obviously, your strategic plan will be broader than just economic development, but I think that that would be a really critical point of overlap and a way that we could be, stretching some of those resources because that's work that we're already doing. In terms of being able to find additional resources, that is something that because Moss Adams, we have our full consulting team, and then we have our auditing and accounting teams as well. And so that's the type of thing where we'd probably tap into some of the other members of our teams who are working with other cities in your area to say, who's doing what in this area? What are we seeing? Are we seeing any major important grants come through, and bring in that side of the Moss Adams team and be able to support you in that area?
No questions.
Eric,
No.
Okay. Andy, I have a couple of my questions have been answered, but what your team consists of, are they all local, or are these individuals that need to fly in, or?
Great question. Yeah, so most of us are actually based in Seattle. And so if we were kind of come on site, we would either drive or fly in to do that. We are very well set up we could potentially do all of this process virtually. We've certainly done that for other clients as well. So that's something that we're prepared to do if that would help. Obviously, if we want to keep travel costs low, that sets us up well to do that.
Any other final questions or comments? All right, well,
I have one logistical question. If selected, when would you be able to start?
We would be able to start as soon as the contract is signed. So, contracting land, I can't always speak to what the timelines look like over there, but assuming that that moves quickly, we are ready to begin that work.
And I just had one more. I didn't see it in the little information we received earlier. What towns near us have you worked with?
Yeah, so right now, I'm trying to think of who on our team we've done a bunch of work with City of Portland at different times. So that's probably the closest large place that we're talking about. But I actually haven't done work specifically in your area. I think probably the work with Burns Paiute is the closest work that I personally have done. But I could certainly ask around and see if there's any other team members, because I know we have done work really across Oregon. So if that would be of interest, I could follow up with that too.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Annie, very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Best of luck.
Thank you. And so then our 5:45 is.
Yeah, 5:45 couldn't make it. They had a scheduling conflict. Yeah.
Okay.
Who's 5:45? I didn't.
Majorendo, or I can never pronounce that right. His name's Patrick.
And he was here last meeting.
No, that was
Yeah.
Mark. He's the sixth one.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. You can add that. I'll take this off.
We still have
We skipped U of O then?
Yeah, when they get here, yeah.
I don't know protocol about discussing now because we're still recording.
Well, I think it's gonna be discussed in session anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
They can make more copies for anybody. Good. I have two right here. Oh, you took the top. Okay. All right.
Did you add any new ones to the synopsis?
No. Everything's in.
Sean, maybe.
Okay, yeah, I'll put mine to this.
Was the 5:45 group, were they gonna email anything or have any other comments or kind of it is what it is?
Yeah. I'm like, this is our one time for, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That was the Meharonda group.
Yeah.
We maybe can talk about their big packet if you want.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
yeah,
Because,
they definitely have the thickest packet.
and they, price wise, were pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I hate
So it's just one guy. That's one of the reasons he's not here. It's not like Moss Adams who's got a whole team, it's just him.
Okay.
But Meharondo prepared in Arizona for this.
Yes, he's based out of Arizona. But he does work all across, I think mainly the west and southwest.
Let's travel. Okay, so, right.
Florence, he did work for City of Florence, and they were happy with the services, so.
Yeah, that changes the price.
It does. That would be expensive.
does look like he takes the opposite approach of Moss Adams, where community engagement, survey, town hall is the first thing. So
Right.
I wouldn't say last thing for Moss Adams, but that's the first thing he started.
Different strategy though.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't see Oregon on his list. This particular.
It's in the packet, who's based in here?
Let's see, Arizona,
Lawrence.
California. Arizona, California. Colorado. Yep, you're right, under references, Florence, Oregon. One place. Is it appropriate to discuss right now or not?
Yeah, I had to double check the name. So Amanda Ferguson from U of O is in the waiting room.
Okay.
Should we start? You guys
Sure.
ready?
Yep.
Amanda, can you hear us?
I can,
Okay, how are you?
and I even have a video.
There we go. So we can actually get started a little early. Our 5:45 presentation could not make it. So if you are ready, we can get Oregon's presentation going.
Well, sure. Although Anako was actually going to come and help with this presentation, and she's not on yet. So the question is, do you want to wait for her?
We can do that, yes. Yep. I will keep my eye on the waiting room.
Okay, great.
Nope. Sean, get you up to speed, our 5:30 presented and our 5:45 couldn't make it. So we're waiting from a presenter from Oregon to sign on and they'll get started. Awesome. Amanda, you want to go and get started so you guys don't run out of time? And wait out, I can get Anika in as soon as they're.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to start. And I asked Aniko to participate today because she has a longer history with IPRI. And if you're asking questions specifically about contracts or budgeting, she would actually probably have better answers for you. But we can certainly chat about the project that we're proposing before she gets here.
I think that's our main focus tonight.
So I can start by introducing myself. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Amanda Ferguson. I am a pro tem employee with IPRI, which is the Institute for Policy Research and Engagement at the University of Oregon. I have about 25 years of experience in local government history, most recently working for the city of Cottage Grove as their principal planner, but I've also worked for Lane County and Eugene and the Corps of Engineers and a number of other organizations. And I will be working with Josh Bruce on this plan were we to move forward with this project. So I want to start off by asking, Josh, do you have any questions specifically?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Not Josh.
Josh, I'm sorry. Does anybody have any questions specifically that you would like me to address?
I think the question maybe I had was the steering committee. How would that come about? I don't know if you steal anybody else's questions, but I was curious as about how it just seems like an extra step, I guess.
To have a steering committee? Well, the steering committee is really up to the purview of Cascade Locks. Typically, we work with the steering committee to provide us a number of voices with our clients so that there's a group of individuals that are strong stakeholders with your community that would be able to provide us feedback on the products that we're delivering and help us make sure that we're engaging with the proper people when we're talking about identifying public engagement opportunities, and that the ideas that we raise and the information that we find through the survey and through the focus groups, and then help us coalesce that information into findings. That stakeholder group, that steering committee, though, can be made up of whomever really that you want to incorporate into that group. It can be just staff. It can be staff and city council, staff and planning commission, staff, planning commission, city council, and representatives from stakeholder organizations within Cascade Locks. It's really up to you.
In your past experience, hi, I'm Denise. How have cities chosen the members of the steering committee from all of those areas that you just mentioned, or?
It's not unusual to have a member or two from each of your public bodies, so from the planning commission and from city council. You do not, of course, want more than 3 of either of those bodies on the steering committee, because then it becomes a function of that planning commission or city council, and it becomes a public meeting. So a member or 2 from the planning commission and city council is typically done by either appointment from city council or by the planning commission. In my case, often the planning commissioners will self-select who is interested in working on the project. Staff, of course, is entirely up to you as far as who you feel needs to be represented in the steering committee. And then our recommendations would probably be that you look at, from there, if you want to add additional people, then you would look at large stakeholders, be they federal or state agencies that you feel like have a real future or role to play in the future of Cascade Locks. It could be from the school district, could be from the fire district. You could have neighborhood groups that want to be representative. It's not unusual to have a chamber of commerce representative. So it sort of depends on who you feel are the stakeholders for Cascade Locks in the strategic planning process.
Thank you. And the survey will begin right away as well, the surveying with community. That's important to me.
Yes, it's really early in the process. So it will actually we'll be developing that survey in March, in concurrence with the literature and data review and that formation project kickoff meetings. And as part of that, we will provide an opportunity for people to review that survey and to test that survey before we submit it to the public. That test could be to your steering committee. It could also be to city council or to 5 random people that you want to choose. The intent of the test is really just to make sure that we're not ambiguous or that we're getting the kinds of answers that we feel that we need. So we can do changes to the wording of the survey questions if we don't feel like we're getting the kind of answers we need. But then we would hope to get that survey out to the public no later than the last week of March, so that we have a minimum of 3 weeks to have it out and to the public to receive as many responses as possible, and then be able to get the results back and get them to the stakeholder committee.
Question. Can you talk a little about engage the community through active participation? Is it just a survey or is it in person? Like, can we talk a little bit about that, how you're going to engage the community?
The scope of work does include a public workshop, which would occur after the survey was complete. So we do the online survey for 3 weeks, say, and then about 2 to 3 weeks later, we would hope to hold a public workshop. That would be a 90 to 120 minute workshop that would have 3 U of O staff, including our student representative, there to support. And we would work with the steering committee to do the agenda for that public workshop, but it would include active strategic planning exercises with whomever shows up. And our hope is that we would have enough time in advance to that public workshop to really get the word out and make sure that it can be as heavily attended as possible.
I know one of our concerns is reaching everyone in the community. A lot of people are not going to do an online survey. So it's going to exclude some if we don't try and somehow incorporate the best of all worlds.
Have you done mailing surveys as well?
I have done Snail mail surveys can work for a small group. If you have the budget to do a snail mail survey, you certainly can do that. You can also do printed surveys that you provide to, say, food. I've actually given them to community sharing and Food for Lane County before to hand out. We've done put them at libraries, put them at City Hall, provided them in a number of different formats. You can do a link on a city water bill to the online survey. So if people don't see it through the website, they can possibly find it in that way as well. So there are a number of different ways that we can get that survey out. I'm happy to, if you have ideas of how it would be best to get a survey out or engage with people within your community, we can modify the scope of work in order to bring those in, particularly when we're talking about tribal members and other things like that. We may want to do some more direct engagement.
Any questions? And my other question, it has been mentioned in some strategic planning proposals that there's also community engagement after the plan is developed, like before, like, okay, here we are, what do you think? Is that an additional, if we're asking for that? Is that something you normally do?
It's something I have normally done in the past. Typically, when you get a draft document, you go back out to the public again to show, okay, so this is where all of that information that you gave us through the process, how we've heard it and how we've coalesced it, and did we get it right? This schedule for the scope of work is very short. I'm sure you noticed that doing this between March and May allows us to do the initial public engagement, but it doesn't really incorporate a lot of final public engagement. We could, of course, assist with that in some way, but that could also be done without the U of O's involvement.
I will point out, when I talked to them, I was trying to get something at least halfway done before our budget season. So we did some, when we did our budget, tie it back to this, because I didn't want to do our budget and then have a community vision plan come out that doesn't match our budget.
Right, right.
So that's kind of why the tight.
Amanda, I asked this question to another person, so I'll ask you. Obviously, you're in Oregon. Obviously, you worked, many years. So you have some familiarity with and possibly advice to state committees or other ways to possibly seek funding for some of the things we're planning for. Are you familiar with that? And we just signed up for the Main Street program, and as we start to imagine, we're going to find some money.
Certainly, that's one of the things we can always do is talk about funding opportunities that align with the strategic goals that you identify. We have a lot of resources and a lot of past experience helping people identify potential funding resources. And the Main Street program is great, by the way. Big fan.
And travel. Are you including travel expenses in your budget, or is that extra?
The travel expenses in the budget are for the public workshop that I mentioned. It does bring the staff up to and spend the night in Cascade Locks in order to do that workshop. There are no other meetings that are in person that are in the budget, though.
And that everybody from Oregon? Or is there anybody traveling outside of the state to us?
No.
And I think this one was a fixed fee, it did not include travel.
Except for this one meeting, I think.
It's not in the scope of work that was presented to us. Schedule and budget says the IPRE proposes to complete the work program for a fixed fee of $12,500. Are we misreading that?
No. So that's yeah, go ahead, Annika.
Yeah, so I think it's a fixed fee, so we didn't call out where the travel was happening, but in the budget we have the one overnight trip and we have budgeted for 2 just day trips there and back in the same day. So there's some flexibility if we want to do some more in-person engagement as well. But I think the overnight one was the big workshop.
Thank you.
And then the question I have, my name is Pete, is who else is going to be involved in this project? And, is it mainly students that are going to be taking this on as a project that they're going to working on through their coursework, or is this staff that are, working with the IPRE that are helping us through this project?
You've got a breakdown of the staff that is providing the majority of the work. So it would be Josh and I providing the majority of the staff support for the entire project, including working with the steering committee, writing the documents, etc. We will have a student to support us in the survey work and probably the workshop. So we have about 40 hours of student time as incorporated into the budget.
That coalescing all that data, I think, the more data we collect, sometimes it can be a little bit complicated to try to sort through that. So can you kind of walk us through how you take all of this data and digest it down into actionable, information that we can utilize?
Well, there is a lot of data, both from the survey that we'll be generating as well as from our literature review. So we use a number of different tools, Qualtrics, et cetera, to do the survey reports themselves so that we'll be able to finesse the questions, hopefully with our advisory committee, to be able to make sure that we get the answers that we need, and then we can understand the data that it produces, and then use that and present it to the steering committee and give with other examples of what other cities have done as well in order to try to address some of those questions. Aniko, do you have anything else you'd like to say? Now that you're here, welcome, by the way.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm representing Josh right now and the logistics side of things if we have questions. But I think, we have lots of experience with taking all of this information and sifting through it. I think our goal is that we have really good notes so that if you want to see all of it, you can, but also whenever we're working with you as a steering or whoever the steering committee ends up being, that we've done some work to synthesize that. So you're not getting the deluge of information, that you're getting kind of the key themes that we've picked out through the qualitative analysis and the quantitative analysis of it, and that we're showing that to you. So we've digested it a little bit. Is that answering your question? I'm sorry, I can't see names right now, but.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Are you able to, hi, I'm Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Are you able to provide some examples of your work, like the results from you doing this strategic planning with maybe, I know probably not as small as us, but baby. So I think would be helpful too.
Yeah. The actual most recent official strategic plan that we did was with a fire district. So a little bit different of an entity, but we also do other types of planning processes with communities. And so I think I could for sure pull together some examples of what our kind of action-oriented type reports look like when we're doing that kind of work with communities. So you could, pull 3 or 4 examples to share with you.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you. I think that's 16.
Yep.
So, all right. Thank you so much for presenting.
Absolutely. It was great to meet you guys. Thank you for holding this meeting tonight.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Halfway through I have it in the email. You have it. So it looks like our next 2 are here. Jensen? There we go. Amelia, can you hear us?
I believe so. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing well. I apologize. We were having some issues with the meeting code, but I think we have it just about sorted out, and my fearless leader will be joining me shortly, Eric Jensen.
Okay, all right. There was another person in the waiting room and then they disappeared. I can't remember the name now.
Okay. I'm gonna...
I want to say it was I didn't know if they were with you or not.
They should be. Let me go check on them really quick. I'm so sorry for the delay. I am so sorry about that. Do you have someone in your waiting room now? Oh, perfect.
Very good. All right. You guys can jump right in and we'll get going. I know it's kind of a quick timeline, so go ahead.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and sorry for the short delay here. We're dealing with typing numbers incorrectly. My name is Eric Jensen, and I am the principal and founder of Jensen Strategies based here in Oregon. And I'm here with Amelia Wallace, associate with our firm. I want to thank you folks for the opportunity to bid on this process. We're really excited at the prospect of working out in the gorge again. But before we briefly recap our proposal, I'd like to quickly share a little bit about us and why we're the best firm to assist you in this long-term planning Jensen Strategies is a 10-year-old firm. We're a management consulting firm. We specialize in local government. 99% of our clients are cities, counties, and special districts. Our services include collaborative decision-making, organizational development, public policy analysis, and we also do public manager recruitments as well. Little bit about me, briefly. I am a former public administrator with the city of Hillsborough, and a project manager before that, and also a former public involvement practitioner. I've led
council here in town.
I'm sorry.
I was actually on mute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'll continue on then. I've led large and small vision and strategic planning processes for Oregon communities, including Hillsborough, Medford, Lebanon, and others. I've also facilitated long-term goal setting for city councils all over the state. I teach, have taught visioning and strategic planning for the League of Oregon Cities. I have a lot of experience designing, facilitating, and or managing public involvement processes for big and small planning projects, including the international award-winning Hillsborough 2020 Vision Project. Just quickly, what we think makes us different than the other firms and entities that you're looking at right now is a combination of the fact that we're Oregon-based. We're located in Portland. We're knowledgeable about Oregon. We're knowledgeable about the Columbia Gorge. We've done work out in Hood River. We have a deep bench of combined experience in public involvement, long-term community planning, and council goal setting. And the other thing that sets us apart is we have a reputation and a track record of setting our clients up for implementation. It's one thing to go through a planning process, another thing to actually implement it and bring it to reality. For this project, I'm going to be the principal in charge for the project, and Amelia will be serving as the project manager. And so I'm going to turn it over to her now.
Thanks, Eric. Well, it's very nice to meet you. Hope that you guys are avoiding the snow down in the gorge that we're getting a little bit of here in Portland. But it's very nice to meet you. My name is Amelia Wallace. I've been an associate with the firm, working with the firm about 2.5 years as an associate. Over that time, I've gained an extensive amount of experience working with city councils and commissions, participating over a dozen recruitments, supporting facilitation processes as well, including serving as the project lead for city council goal setting and other goal setting processes. So it would be an honor to work with your city. To quickly overview the project approach that's in our proposal that you all have ideally have at your fingertips. We understand that your council already does some of the work to set goals and really act as strategic leaders, but you're ready to take the next step. So that means devoting a little bit more time and seeing if you can realize those results down the line. But more centrally, what we understand is that you're looking for ways to substantively engage your community and have them really inform your work from the outset. But you might not be sure exactly what that should look like and how to make it meaningful. And frankly, we think that's something that we'd be honored and well suited to help you with. So to briefly overview the phases of the project that are outlined in the proposal, we wanted to start by making sure that we understand your council, your staff, and what you need to get out of this process. So that means usually we do individual interviews that we find are a very effective way of not only creating a collective vision for the process, but also identifying any challenges early on that we can troubleshoot to make the process more effective. Next, while we've suggested a format that the city can use that would work within the proposed budget and timeline, once we do the interviews, we'll be more confident what we're seeking and what this should look like. And that'll allow us to take a more informed and detailed planning approach to really customize the input and format to meet your needs. So specifically, we envision that likely including at least 2 feedback methods, an online survey, which can be great for reaching a broader audience, expanding your reach in a cost-effective way, and also creating a kind of safe, confidential space. That's one thing we take pride in and is a real reason we think folks benefit from our services, is that we are a neutral third party that can help facilitate this process and create a safe space. In addition to that, we'd recommend holding a community workshop because we all work better when we get to talk together. So creating a space where we can do that, we find really effective. And we also strive to be aware of physical and other access needs, so we make sure it's a welcoming space as much as possible. But we also know events are only often as successful as their promotion, right? It only helps if people know about it and are able to show up. So we use a high variety of techniques to engage and promote events that we run, but ultimately, we know you know your community the best. So we try to work really closely with staff to pick all the right tools out of our toolbox so we can reach your community in ways they expect and new ways. We noticed that you have a community calendar, which is awesome. So many communities don't even have that kind of tool. So that is excellent. And yeah, as I was saying, we know we can't predict everything and we don't know everything. So we work closely with you all to make sure we get all the right pieces of information. From there, once we've gotten to know you all and your community, we then work to say, how can we put this in a usable format? Both the community input received, that's one big value add, is that you don't have to go through all those survey responses. We try to break that into both bite size and actionable chunks that your community can use. That then prepares us to really take the rubber to the road, engaging in that informed design process that I was suggesting earlier, and allowing us to facilitate a session that's really responsive to the community input that was received and helpful for the council to consider as you create your revised and new goals for the next year. At the facilitated session, as I mentioned, there would be a lot of details we'd want to use with we want to inform with the information we gain, but we'd see that being, a one-day session where we can help you build a tool that helps guide your organization and specifically is actionable with ongoing implementation steps and recommendations. So what? So what does all that mean? We believe this approach is responsive to your needs as we understand them now, but that it also has the ability to grow and be customized as we learn more. We believe that will help you feel confident in the long-term investment that you're making in this process. And most importantly, that, as Eric mentioned, our firm and our team members are rooted in public involvement. So we hope that you'd be confident letting us represent your city and really engage with your community, both in a respectful way and in a way that aligns with best practices of public engagement and goal setting. So with that, I'd like to turn it back to Eric and see if he has anything he'd like to add, and then let you all hopefully ask a couple questions.
Okay, I'm going to make this very quick because I want to get to your questions, but I do want to emphasize again what we think makes us different. We do know Oregon. We know the Columbia Gorge. We've worked out in Hood River. We have the combined experience and deep experience in public involvement, long-term community planning, council goal setting. And most importantly, we know how to set you up for successful implementation of the goals and or strategies that you decide that you would like to move forward with. So we can lay the groundwork for that. So we're anxious to work with you and would like to hear your questions. Thank you.
Questions?
I do appreciate your Oregon and board presence and small towns like Carlton. Thank you and your experience. And I'm excited about the word implementation. I presume you've been with League of Oregon Cities. You're familiar with grant opportunities or other funding opportunities that you can help guide us when you're helping us with our implementation plan. Do you want to speak to that?
Sure. And actually, Eric, I think you might be best suited to speak to that piece.
Yeah. Well, we certainly are prepared to help give advice and direction on that in terms of opportunities for funding on things that may be in your action plan that come out of this process. And so we're happy to share those resources as much as possible. The one thing I would like to emphasize, though, is that really what you want to have coming out of this process is a map of where you want to go. And the ability to fund those things may not be immediately apparent. But what it does is it tells you that when you have the resources, you know where you're going to go with those resources.
Thank you.
Can you speak a little bit more specifically about how you would help us with the implementation phase?
Absolutely. So, we can, what we do is once we've identified the long-term goals, the direction that you want to go, that we're assuming that will be informed by your community. We will help break that down in a linear fashion so that you have an action plan that has strategies with the direction that you want to go in implementing your goals. And then under each of the strategies, you will have a set of actions, which are the on the ground, where the rubber meets the road, projects, programs, and activities specific with responsible parties for implementing those actions. And we will help you to kind of walk through that process so that you have a linear connection from your goals all the way down to the actions that you want to implement.
And so that will be part of that summary report that we'll have in task 6 that's in the scope of work. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Eric, I have a question, Kathy. On it, it said 20,000. Is it up to 20,000 and it caps at 20,000?
Our budget is for 20,000. And we meant by not to exceed, working with local government, we know it's important to have a not to exceed contract. And so that's just saying that within the scope of the 20,000, the scope of work that we have will be contained within that price point.
It's not in it, travel is not in addition. Correct?
Travel is not in addition. No, we included travel in that.
Great, thank you.
So it's actual expenses up to $20,000, which would include printing and travel and everything else. But potentially it could be under 20K if we didn't actually, we're just awesomely efficient.
Optimism. I love it. Efficient government? No. All right, any other questions?
Eric, timeline for when you guys can start?
I'm going to turn it over to Amelia as the project manager.
That would be something that we would negotiate with the staff person that we work most closely with. We'd anticipate, sorry, I apologize, I didn't have the schedule pulled right up in front, but we'd anticipate looking at, I believe, April for the session, but planning out the process to make sure that there's sufficient time to complete interviews before the session, and then have sufficient planning window between the session and the council setting so we can really use that to inform the process. But we would want to work closely with your staff to make sure, A, we're not putting that at times your community is not likely to show up and not likely to participate in processes, and that would align with your schedule needs as far as getting the information from the goals.
Thank you.
And what are we hoping to have this completed by?
Substantial completion by May was kind of my hope, so we could tie it into. But again, I know that's a really tight timeline.
And so when is the budget process?
So our budget doesn't kick in until July 1. Normally the budget process when the budget committee meets is usually earliest is usually mid-May. Could be early June. Every city or county does it.
I'm just wondering if they'd be able to maybe start in March to give us another few weeks.
That's what, yeah.
Would that be an option?
For starting early processes, getting the initial logistics and planning for stakeholder interviews, yes.
So we could get started kicking things off in March as opposed to April to hopefully finish or have at least closer to completion at the time of budgeting. Is that what I heard you say?
I believe so. So we'd want to negotiate the specific dates once we actually move towards that. But in March, we have at least one time when our firm isn't available to start. But beyond that, we'd be looking at doing early planning, our kickoff meeting with key staff, either, right in March, but right before April or starting in early April.
Any other? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you. We hope to work with you. Right.
Seen work on yet. Not here. It said we might come in person and present. I can go check my emails. Sure, I don't have any missed one. No emails, no phone calls.
Does he know where? Was he coming in person?
Yeah, he was at the last meeting, right? Yeah, he answered questions at the last meeting, so you know where we're at. He originally told me he couldn't make it because he had a flight, and then he said, no, I can make it, so.
Okay. You have his number of intent. Are you coming?
I can run back to my office and maybe we'll.
So, it seems like she said very specifically the University of Oregon to limit the involvement from any of the committees and council to 3 or less, so that way it's not a public meeting. It seemed like maybe it was intentional to try to make it so there wouldn't be quite as much transparency.
I don't think any of them could have 3 or more of us in one meeting without making it a public
It'd
meeting.
be a public meeting.
Yeah, so they can't do that unless we call it a public meeting. I think she was suggesting, because we had questions about the steering committee, who wanted to be on it, that she wouldn't want more than 3. And it sounds to me like your vote, we could suggest we don't necessarily want a steering committee, we want more. I don't know what you're thinking. I'm not sure the best way. I've seen most planning, the only 2 places I've been in, have steering committees, but chosen by this body.
There he is, he's right now. Come on in.
It's just one one more chance of input, I think, than the others are just doing interviews with us in the community. I like Jensen and I like. Hi.
Hi there. Hi there.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Mark Seder. Great to be here.
Thank you for coming.
Sure. I understand I have 15 minutes. And
Yeah, about roughly 15, yeah.
some of that you'd like to be question and answer. That kind of thing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Then I'm not going to bore you with too much stuff. So I do have case to our help, got all kinds of information on our community-based work and planning and building projects.
All right.
That's kind of what we do, both of us. And as I sort of told Jordan and maybe introduced him a little bit too, as he's moved into his position, we've done a lot of, I'd say a lot of planning work in Cascade Rocks. Very little building work in Cascade Rocks, a lot of planning work. Other places we've done quite a bit of both. So we like to be flexible and meet the needs of where we are on any given effort or project. But when we do have the chances to work with communities, sort of from early in the process or from even the visioning or the start of efforts, and help you sort of guide community growth and discover what that wants to be in community development. I think that can always be a very positive, valuable place for us to help you. We're very hands-on. There's the leading a project in Hamilton to envision how they can better connect their downtown to the Umatilla River. And very community process. I'll show you just a few things that we've done in Cascade Rocks. Just then I'd like to indicate our proposal to you. That makes sense. I did listen to the last meeting by Zoom also, so that was kind of helpful, I thought, because I want to maybe address a couple of things I heard there as well. But we've done work on Wanapa, various visioning works to envision certain kinds of improvements that can happen, and particular ones that, let's say, potential farmers or public market.
Was this working with the port or the city, that drawing?
At that time, it was with the port, with Gary Raines, who was the sort of the development or whatever director of the port. We had an economic development position, and we worked with the port on quite a few of these efforts. Just Grows, doing Caldwell, Tom Cranley, representing the city usually. So we, as part of our work on Wanapa and envisioning, working with people to kind of envision things that could happen on Wanapa, we did note the grade difference, and we were, I think, one of the first to suggest that there could be an overcross into Marine Park that would conveniently go right over the level that we need to clear for train, but not for vehicles, because we recognized that someone previously suggested a vehicle crossing, and we could tell just from looking at it that would be pretty intrusive and difficult. That a pedestrian bicycle crossing, and we know that that's somewhere out there in the process with ODOT. This is the interior of what a market building on Wanapum. Then we did other work that suggested mixed use housing over the top of retail space.
What year were these developed?
That was 13.
Okay.
The first thing we did in Cascade Rocks was in 2012. The port had us study the Parkview site, where Gorgeous Brewery is now. And we did some sort of master planning options for what might happen on that site. And so we took a look at that. I think part of our approach to any community and city, especially in Oregon, is very site specific. What are the opportunities and the limitations and the real value of a site? So like your Parkview site, for instance, we recognize the sloping site and the nice views. Yeah, the higher up on that site you go, or you did go. And so we had concepts that kind of took advantage of that, developed in the upper part of that site, overlooking between and through potential commercial on Wanapum. Of course, it went in this is an interior view from what could be some sort of a living unit or even hotel unit up on the upper part of that site, protected from some of the traffic right on Wanapum, but looking at the incredible views that in Cascade Rocks with a whole lot of rivers and views and nature. So that's been I think one of those things that's really been so nice about working here and working in the community.
I have a question for you. It looks like you've got, a lot of drawings and ideas and things. Can you, and I mean, I want to make sure you have enough time to answer questions.
Absolutely.
So can you talk a little bit about how you would gather the information and about the planning and implementation of it?
I don't know if Jordan passed out, I think maybe you didn't pass out our draft proposal. We call it just exactly that because we usually think of those as our first stab at it, and then we move closer and closer to what really makes sense. Right. I think as one of your council members commented that ours had needs, very community oriented, and that's the way we work. We don't have grand overarching theories of how things have to be. We work with communities and try and ask the right questions, elicit input and responses, and zero in on developing options and presenting them, and then reworking them, often right in the meeting. Try to move in on what really starts to make sense for the community. So, for instance, we're proposing here, for starters, basically several meetings after the initial startup and information gathering for us, but we proposed 3 community visioning meetings. And we hope that that you or the city can help identify and notify stakeholders and community at large and others. We don't see, we're not proposing a steering committee buffer necessarily between the community and the stakeholders and what we do, reporting to the city between meetings and keeping tabs on how things are going and adjusting, yes, but we're not second suggesting there be a steering committee. So we're proposing that there could be 3 community meetings. Our proposal is flexible to either add or subtract from that. That's why we offer it as a, TM or cost or materials proposal. So that's that our fees are basically the time and materials we spend. So during those meetings, I think we start with an overall discussion and hopefully a walking tour of some key sites and key areas, and talk about what people feel about Cascade Locks and what are some opportunities and what's actually kind of in the works right now and what's coming, and how do people feel about that. And so basically start that process, bring maps and photographs and any previous work of ours or others that's helpful in setting the tone and context, but we just start leading that process, working with you and asking the right questions. Hopefully, we've got some kind of exercises that can help energize meetings and get people thinking and talking both, and giving us their input. And each meeting would build on the last one, saying, tell us if we've got this, but here's kind of what we're hearing from the first meeting. We've heard these things. And we'd like to take that a little bit further or entertain other thoughts that you've had in the meantime. So I would encourage that any attendees at the first meeting attend the other meetings as well, and any additional attendees, and we'll just go through the process. So we're working between those meetings to integrate that and come back at the next meeting with even more developed diagrams, concepts.
So each meeting would be a different format to try and get different views.
I think we'd be building on each meeting. We'd be saying, here's what we heard, here's some diagrams and other things that we think we've heard about. Here's what we're coming up with is the kind of opportunity that seems to be here in the parameters or metrics. Here's how much site area you have. We've looked at your code, and if you had a certain level of development on a certain site, you require this much parking by code, that kind of thing. We can help identify any impediments or challenges or hurdles that need to be overcome. And we know there are some. So we're proposing those 3 meetings, and then a council and public presentation. And here's what we've heard, here's who we are. And we're offering this for sort of your comments and final review comments by the council for us to integrate into a final report. And there would be actually one final chance for the public participants or others to comment. And then we'd submit a final report that would be a combination of graphics and maps, drawings, whatever, and text. Also identify where we can kind of ascertain them, maybe certain key costs for some cost ranges for things that seem to have real importance or have legs or wings that they may move forward. And we also help identify. One thing we've been having a lot of success with our owners is helping identify strategically where funding might be, where is their money, and how do you get in line with that? What's the process? And we've been having some really good success with that lately, and we were part of the Maupin Civic Center, that's their new architects of the new library, city hall.
You helped them with that project?
We not only helped them, we were the architects, but we also were part of the strategy. we met a number of occasions with 3 mayors, current and 2 former, because they all had the same goal. We want this thing. We want this. We don't care if we're mayor now or ward mayor. We want this civic center, and that was very successful. They received $1.5 million from the state of Oregon for that. To go along with some tremendous community fundraising, and made that project happen up there. And then we were part of their new track. They're getting the new athletic facility, track and field facility. It's kind of state of the art now up there.
I want to, not to interrupt, but I want to allow just a couple minutes for any questions, because I'd like to have maybe about 3 minutes before we start our next meeting.
Sure.
So we need to take a break real quick. So, is there any questions?
Yeah, so I know we've got a very limited time, but thanks for coming this year. Ted, you mentioned at the very beginning, you've done lots of plans and visioning with Cascade Locks in their city. You've been involved with a lot of different ideas, but not a lot of implementation. Why is that, in your opinion, since you've worked with us, have these plans that you've put together not come to fruition?
Well, I guess in a sense they do, but we're not involved. Some of them are still in the hatching stage, you might say, like a new pony building and an expansion of the museum. That hasn't really gone beyond some initial planning, and we've done some major planning work and visuals for what happens in the whole railroad parking site. UP Plaza was called, what could happen down there, but it just hasn't really gone anywhere yet. So there's that level, and then a couple spots on Wanapa. Basically, I think Gorge's Brewery probably had their own people that they brought in, but were very interested in the site. And Thunder Island, basically they were all connected with their own consultants on another site that we studied. So for their new building.
I guess the reason why I asked that question is because I feel like that's a lesson that we're trying to avoid. We don't want to put together a strategic plan and not do anything with it. So I wondered if there was any insights you had from your prior working experiences that we can learn from and maybe avoid that trap.
So we haven't built a lot here, but we're in for permit for this probably about $10 million new civic center, business center in Umatilla. Okay, that was a project that we started on to revitalize their downtown, and it started as a tiny project and got bigger and bigger. I think that's a case of municipality having the money and the resources to build. So I guess that's an example of when we do connect.
And if I may, the Maupin, I'm Denise, hello, the Maupin Civic Center, which we're excited to hear about. We know that there was some grant funding. Did you help them to chase down that grant funding, or any kind of expertise in writing for that? Or it sounds like you're fabulous with this architecture and urban design for these small communities. And I'm wondering about the city council plan and how we move toward implementation, if you have that experience, and if you did that in Maupin.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you speak
There's
to that?
their new civic center. There's our 3 mayors plus a grant writer that we were part of the meetings for. And yes, we sat there with them in one of their homes and said, what is it that we can do to get money for this civic center? Well, we've done some great community fundraising, but this isn't getting over the hump. And we did help develop the strategy. And along with the grant writer in that case, who and how to go to the state of Oregon to say the right things and ask for the right things to get money. So I think, I think in that case, there were some definite keys to that behind the scenes things, and just things that clicked that might not have been obvious without that kind of thought process and going through that. We've recently been and continue to be very successful with OPRD, the Oregon Parks and Recreation District, getting monies because we know how to help an owner best position for those. And our Umatillus Business Center as a generous recipient of large federal grant. So we've been working with a whole nother level of folks to help them gain and meet the stringent requirements of the feds.
Thank you. Sorry, in respect of time, some of this may need a break, but we've got 2 minutes. So.
Yeah, we don't have to start exactly at 7, right? We can take a break.
Yeah, we're gonna take a couple minute break. Really appreciate you coming. Thank you. And it sounds like just one last comment on the drawing, like in reference to the court, they weren't asking you to implement anything like how to do these buildings. You were just asked to create what their vision, what they were thinking.
We talked about potential funding sources, and we talked about what we could do next if we were to be the architects.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, that was a little part of it. So.
Thank you so much for presenting.
For all those online, we're gonna end this workshop and restart council meeting shortly.